What is up YouTube? My name is Josh and welcome back to the Game Bros. Now we're about to head into a brand new season of Siege, so with that in mind, what I wanted to do today is go through some of the most recent patch, design and developer notes for Siege, just to see what we're running into in the new season. So without further ado, we're going to cut straight into it. If you guys do enjoy this sort of content, do feel free to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new here. Okay, so here we are on the official Ubisoft website. We're looking at the designer notes today. So this is Year 6, Season 3, pre-season designer notes. Now, as always, with most of these designer notes, they do give you a good insight as to what operators we're typically seeing most of. In ranked, a lot of these are platinum and above lobbies as well. But you can see that the sort of same culprits that you expect to see are still there. You've got your Thatcher, Twitch, Ash, Jackal. Interesting to see Janna up there now. Sledge is always a constant pick, and of course Ace. And you still see a lot of the guys that fall behind. Blitz, Glaz not seeing a lot of action. Fuse is an interesting one, which we'll keep an eye on going into this season as well with his changes. So I would expect to see him creep up a little bit more. Zofia has a bit of a knock-on effect with her recoil change. Moving on to the defenders, you can see Jaeger's still way up there. It doesn't matter what they do to this guy, he is still in play. Valkyrie and Mozzie still seeing quite a bit of action. The likes of Clash obviously being banned quite a lot as well. Tachanka still, fairly lackluster for a lot of people. Doesn't matter what utility they give him, he is still down there. But it's an interesting spread of operators. You've still got your usual picks. Your Bandit, although he's becoming slightly more obsolete as the more operators come out. Smoke and Mute. Mute at the moment, again, another one to keep an eye on with changes coming up. So really interesting to observe those guys. Moving down to the ban rates. Now again, Thatcher being up there, that's no shock. Jackal, typically these are the two that most people worry about. Last thing you want as a defender is Jackal tracking your every move and making it really, really difficult to sort of plan your next action or hold any angles. And Thatcher, typically, with every new operator that comes out, Thatcher just gets a buff. So there's no surprise to see him kick to the sidewalk there. Moving down to the defenders ban rate, obviously we still see a very high percentage of mirror bans up there at 70%, and about 45% of that is a Valkyrie ban as well. Cade, obviously, typically what Bandit can do, Cade just does a little bit better, so it's not surprising to see him banned as much as he is, and then Clash following suit as well. So no drastic changes in bans really across the board. These are all sort of culprits, as I've mentioned before, that you would expect to be banned. So moving on to the system reworks, you can see that straight away we're looking at an ammo count plus magazine change. The idea of this is to somewhat restrict, especially when it comes to assault rifles and attackers, restrict the amount of ammo being dumped into regular angles that get peaked, or just trying to pre-fire common spots. The idea is that you're still going to have enough ammo to challenge things and enough ammo to see you out of the round, but you do have to be a bit more conservative about what fights you take, what fights you don't take, where you pre-fire. So it does give you a bit of a breakdown to the minimum ammo count range and the maximum ammo count range that we're going to be going into. So if you take a look at the assault rifles, for example, it does say by lowering the total ammo of assault rifles, we want to make shooting them feel more deliberate, meaning that while players should have enough ammo to take on every engagement, they need to be more careful about wasting bullets. And I think that's exactly what they're trying to do here. So I won't delve too much into this, it's pretty self-explanatory. But you guys can go and have a look at this yourself if you want to. Other interesting changes, they are changing some of the damage drop-offs and silencers. So they've adjusted damage drop-off for each primary weapon type, except for shotguns with spread pellets, to have consistent linear curves. Unified damage drop-off for silencers, which is 15% across all primary weapons except for shotguns with spread pellets. And they're targeting most of the player base here, casual, top ranked and pros. You can see that the first drop off here being within the 25 meter range for assault rifles, and the last drop off around the 35 meter range with a minimum damage threshold of 60%, and obviously the rest follow suit. So again, I'll link this document down below in the video, guys. If you want to check this out and delve more into that, then feel free. Flashes are also something else that's going to be changed in the new system. So you can see here it states that Ying's Candela, Blitz's G52 tactical shield and the stun grenade use a new flash detection system that calculates flash duration. It takes the environment and angle of the explosion into account, as well as players' distance and orientation. If an operator is affected, they will always be flashed at 100%, but the duration will change each time, increasing the reliability of the flash effect. So these are going to have a real buff, because beforehand it's a case that the flash comes in, you've got a couple of seconds, you turn into a wall, face away, you're good to go. Whereas that really doesn't seem to be the case moving forward. You know, we're going to spend a lot of time potentially blind, really. If you've got a Ying, a Blitz, anyone else with flash grenades, and you're a defender, you're going to have a terrible time. But we'll see how that plays out. But a key change is that HP is now replacing armor. Operator armor will be converted to hit points. 3 armor operators will have 125, 2 armor will have 110, and 1 armor will have 100. Now, Rook's armor plates will simply grant a buff to permanent HP for the round rather than a direct armor buff. Picking up the armor plates will buff an operator's maximum HP by 20 until the end of the round. Any heals will heal up to this new maximum value for the duration of the round. So if you do get tagged whilst you've got the armor plate in, you can be healed back up to where you were, back up to that extended value of 20. HP is now represented using a hit point bar in the HUD instead of the traditional circle. So interesting change. I guess that's more about making the interface a little bit more sleek, and that is then targeted to everyone really, casual, top ranked and pros. Screen shakes, this has been an annoyance for quite a lot of the community actually. For most explosives that go off, especially concussion grenades from Zofia, Grismont mines from Ella, it's just annoying. And given how each micro movement in Siege can cost your life or take a life, this can be quite game breaking sometimes. So screen shakes that result from explosions are now reduced across the board and are completely removed from certain device explosions. Screen shakes are completely removed from explosions caused by Grismont mines, the concussion grenades from Zofia, Echo's Yokai Sonic Burst, and Nomad's Air Jab. So I for one am quite welcoming to these changes, to be fair. It'd be nice to see them because, especially when you're walking through a door, you've got the Yokai drone that's stunning you, a Grismont mine goes off, you're already disorientated from a Lucy trap, and the list goes on. So I don't think that's a bad change at all. Very, very small change to Finka. She's getting frag grenades now added instead of the hard breach charge, perhaps just to try and bring her into a new age of the meta, maybe some utility burning or opening up some picks early on with those frag grenades, or simply, even just giving another operator a chance at burning those bandit batteries off the wall, the Cade Electroclaws. So it'd be nice to see her come into play a little bit more. Now the big change here is with Fuse. Now his cluster charges can now be deployed on reinforced surfaces and Mirror's Black Mirror, which is huge. Fuse is someone that, no doubt, I'm sure it's safe to say, has seen some underwhelming performance in most ranked and unranked games. Typically, if people do play them, it's a case of just place your Fuse charges down and hope for the best. So it'd be nice to see him come into the meta a little bit more. Now, the charges do take longer, so 3 seconds to pass through reinforcement, so it's not just going to be a case that you have to worry about it being placed down and, this guy can just literally place anything for a reinforced wall and it just kills everyone instantly. This is going to take quite a while to deploy, so there's no worries there too much. And I believe once it passes through the wall, it can also still be damaged. Yeah, so it does say the extension tube is now vulnerable to damage. They've also added a gadget light to signify the phase of activation, added VFX for cluster charge triggering on soft walls and reinforced surfaces, and SFX for cluster charge triggering on reinforced surfaces. Now another keynote is the bottom bullet point here. They've increased recoil on the AK12. Now the AK12, by the by, was always considered to be, alongside Twitch's F2, probably one of the best guns in the game, pound for pound, damage for damage. So they're just trying to make that gun, a little bit less reliable, and with a little bit more skill to use. We'll see how that plays out. Not much drastically has changed for Glaz. He's getting a magazine size buff from 10 bullets up to 15, just to try and sort of help him balance out a little bit more into the meta. I can imagine if anyone is playing Glaz, if you take on, one gunfight, flick to someone else, you're not really left with a whole lot of rounds in a magazine to play with. So I can understand the change there. Janna's taken a little bit of a hit. Her G36C is losing a 2x scope, and the ARX200 is losing a 2.5. I can kind of see why they've done this. You know, at the end of the day, it's traditional with most Siege operators. The more they see him play, the quicker they are to take a hit. So I think Ubisoft are hoping that whilst Janna is creeping up there in terms of her pick rate, this might help dumb her down a little bit. But personally, I've never seen too much of an issue with it. Maybe the 2.5x on the ARX is slightly over the top, but then, you know, it does compensate for a smaller magazine. So I'm on the fence with this one, honestly. Now, this is interesting that IQ can now use ping 2.0 through walls and can actually ping operators with wearable electronic devices. So you can flip open your gadget, look for a wall, visuals on his, using his gadget, hide in a corner. You can ping him and be like, look, there's a visual down there. And it's just another way to gather intel for your team. So that's really interesting to me. Probably the highlight of these notes, though, is the new change to mute. So traditionally, mute had a cylinder radius on his mute jammer. This is now being changed to spherical. So you've got a much larger and more dynamic radius to these mute jammers. So the disruption zone shape changed to sphere with the same radius of 2.25 meters from the cylinder shape. And the warning zone shape changed to sphere and radius reduced to 4.75 meters from cylinder 6 meter radius. That is going to have a large impact in how some of the ranked matches, any match, truthfully, will play out. But a lot of the site setups now, you can have a lot more choice when it comes to setting up with mute and a lot more areas of coverage as well. You're going to be able to do a lot more. So I would expect mute's pick rate to certainly skyrocket a little bit. Sledge, unfortunately, his British companion is losing the trusty SMG11. I personally love the SMG11. I wouldn't pick anything else with Sledge. There's just no reason to at the moment. Do I think it's going to have a massive impact on Sledge? I'm not entirely sure. There are people that gravitate directly towards the SMG11 purely for that gun. But, you know, Sledge has got a really, really solid primary. He's got nades. His destructibility is huge anyway, so I don't think you'll see a massive change with Sledge. But there will be people that gravitate towards that gun that are going to be quite upset. Twitch now getting a regular drone during prep phase is fantastic. You know, no longer are you stuck with the sluggish, really slow shock drone that just gets shot when you're trying to get anywhere. Now, her shock drone finally can jump, which is absolutely amazing. It also has infinite range, so you know people are going to be 360 no-scoping default cameras across the map, so that's going to be an interesting one to watch out for. Now, it does not disable electronic devices, and it deals 5 HP damage now instead of 1. So a couple of interesting changes going on there with Twitch. I'm personally really looking forward to it. They've actually decided to drop the whole taser thing completely and opt in for a laser for the projectile instead. Going back to what we mentioned earlier with the AK12, you can see here an actual diagram of what the first shot, and I think there's up to the perhaps 10th bullet recoil looks like, perhaps a little bit more actually shown on this screen, but you can see here nevertheless, the recoil pattern is really quite different to what it is in Year 6 Season 2. So it's going to take a little bit of mastering. You know, do I think it will be drastically unplayable? Not at all. I think, you know, the skill ceiling of a lot of PC players and even some of the console players out there now is so huge. I think people will get their heads around it fairly quickly, but it'd be nice to see this gun sort of brought back down to earth a little bit, because really, you know, especially when it's in the hands of Ace, let alone Fuse, you know, you've got a hard breacher there, Smokes, best gun in the game. There's a lot going for that gun and that operator. But yeah, guys, that does bring us to the end of the video. Let me know what you thought about the designer notes down below. Do you agree with the AK12 changes? What are your thoughts on Sledge losing the SMG? What do you think to Fuse now being able to fuse through reinforced walls, and the mute changes? So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts and your comments. I make content like this all the time. I share this channel with obviously myself and my brother Reese. So if you do want to stick around for the Rainbow Six Siege stuff, then please do subscribe. That's what I'll put up there. If you just want to see content in general, then we post stuff every week. So without further ado, like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you in the next one.